Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be pitting two top-tier flagship wireless earbuds from Sony and Bose. Here we have the Sony WF-1000XM5s, which came out in July of 2023, and on this side we have the Bose Quietcomfort Ultra earbuds, which followed a few months later, in October of 2023. Both these earbuds are priced around $299 here in the US, so let's dive into this comparison and figure out which one is worth the money and which one you should skip. Now on paper, these two sets of premium earbuds have a lot in common. They have similar battery life, they both have Bluetooth 5.3, and they're both IPX4 certified, which means that they'll be okay in a workout or a light rain, but if you're heading to the pool, you better leave them at home. All that said, there's also quite a few differences, which could be a deal breaker for some. The spoiler alert here is that even though the Bose earbuds came out more recently, they lack a lot of the features that have become pretty standard on earbuds for even half the price. The main missing pieces here are that there's no wireless charging included out of the box and no multi-point either. So if either of those two things is super important to you, then you should be looking at the Sonys. That said, there are a few standout features where I think the Bose are the better bet. So let's take a deeper dive and see how these two compare. Let's first look at design and comfort. Now design is the most obvious difference when comparing these two earbuds. The Bose feature these wide stems with their logo emblazoned on the side. And I have the black color here, which is stems that are matte silver, which help this Ultra version stand out from the previous generation of Quietcomfort 2 earbuds. They also feature these kind of oval-shaped nozzles that go inside your ear, in addition to these stability bands which help hold the earbuds in place if you're a little more active with them. In comparison, the Sony XM5s are a little more understated, although equally premium looking. They don't have the stems that protrude from your ears, so they're a little more minimalist while you're wearing them. They have a mix of gloss black and a matte finish, which makes it easy to know where the touch-sensitive areas are for controls. And there's a copper accent here, which I personally really like. Overall, both earbuds are well designed, but I really don't love gloss piano black on either of them, and I don't know why manufacturers insist on putting these on their premium products. Especially for something that requires you to touch them with your fingertips, they immediately pick up fingerprints and they're slippery, which means the higher risk of dropping them while you're transitioning to and from the charging case. If I had to choose which design I like the best between them, I'd go with the Sony, as the stems on the Bose for me are just a little less modern in comparison. Now back to comfort, there's no stability bands on the Sony XM5s, so they are fully reliant on the foam ear tips to keep them inside your head. The material Sony chose for the included ear tips seems to be the same as the previous Gen XM4s, which I really don't find comfortable. I have a hard time getting them to seal in my ears, and they're fatiguing after even a short while. I've instead opted to replace these with third-party silicone tips from SpinFit, which work much better for me. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in those, as it's a cheap upgrade if you're having trouble with fit. That said, I do find that these work their way out of my ears pretty easily if I'm eating, which is pretty annoying when I'm traveling solo. So I have found that the Bose QC Ultras with their stability bands do a much better job of staying sealed in my ears, which is a big plus for me. The bands help them balance in your ears as well, so even though they're 30% heavier than the Sonys, I find the Bose much more comfortable to wear for longer periods of time. The oval shape of the nozzles match the shape of most ear canals as well, which means an easier and more comfortable seal. For these reasons, I'll give the nod to the Bose earbuds in terms of overall comfort. Next, let's talk battery life and charging options. And as I mentioned before, the big elephant in the room is that the Bose QC Ultras lack wireless charging for their charging case. To me, that's kind of crazy here in 2024 to not be included for the price that you're paying. For an extra $49, you can add a silicone case, which will add wireless charging capabilities, but that presents a pretty bad value over the Sony XM5s that have wireless charging built in. Not to mention that even without wireless charging, the case for the Bose is almost double the size of the Sonys. Maybe I'm spoiled by other earbuds I've owned from Samsung and Apple, who both go to great lengths to minimize the case size for their earbuds, but I'm honestly shocked at how big this case is for the Bose. It's wild. It's certainly still pocketable, but you definitely can't fit these in the fifth pocket of your jeans, which I think should be a standard among true wireless earbuds. In terms of published battery life, they're both pretty similar. While both state that you should be able to get 6 hours of use per charge, the Sonys claim an additional 16 hours of battery life in their charging case, while Bose claims an additional 18. I'm going to be completely honest with you and tell you that I have not done a full battery drain test because so many others have. And I'm here to tell you that pretty consistently those reviews have found that the Sonys offer the better real-world battery life. An interesting thing to note that could be contributing to this real-world test is that the Sony XM5s allow you to disable both active noise cancellation and transparency mode, essentially just allowing to use these earbuds as traditional earbuds, which likely helps save on battery life. The Bose QC Ultras don't offer this option, as your only choice are either the quiet ANC mode or their aware transparency mode. Overall, battery life is really good for both of these earbuds, but the winner here has to be the Sonys for including wireless charging and the better real-world test results. That's a perfect segue to talk about active noise cancellation and the transparency modes found in each of these sets of earbuds. Sony gives a bit more granular control of the transparency mode by allowing you to choose the volume of the transparency, which I found nice to be able to really customize that to my liking. That said, both transparency modes worked quite well. Bose has an option that they call Active Sense, which you can toggle on for transparency mode, which will automatically turn down when it detects loud sounds, which is supposed to be helpful to protect your ears from things like sirens or jackhammers or a screaming kid behind you on the bus. But in my testing, it was a little too aggressive in its detection, so I was noticing any increase in volume to result in an automatic volume turn down for the transparency, such as running a faucet, my kids playing in the next room over, even someone just trying to talk to me. So I ultimately turned that feature off, and hopefully that can be improved in a future firmware update. Overall, I think transparency is about tied between both of these sets of earbuds, but it's the active noise cancellation where Bose really sets itself apart. And it's not really a contest. I've never really been impressed with active noise cancellation in other earbuds I've tested in the past, and I often find poor implementations very distracting, where I can actually hear artifacts in the ANC. But I was blown away when I first slipped the QC Ultras into my ears and was greeted with almost complete silence when the ANC kicked on. I've since tested them in other demanding situations, including busy coffee shops and on airplanes, and I continue to be impressed with the ANC. The Sonys have decent ANC, and it ranks right up there with the best of the rest of the earbuds I've used, but if ANC is a priority for you here, the clear winner has to be the Bose QC Ultras. Before we talk sound quality, let's first do a quick microphone test, and let's see how these compare. In this test, I'll first go outside on a busy street, and then we'll switch back into the studio to hear the comparison in both types of settings. Alright, so now we are outside to do a microphone audio test here on a busy street. Behind me, so far you are listening to me on the Samsung S23's built-in microphones, but now I'm going to switch over to the Bose QC Ultras and we'll hear how that sounds. Okay, so now we have switched over to the Bose QC Ultra earbuds and we are using that microphone now to record this video. So we're out here on the street, the cars are going by. What we're listening for is how aggressive is the noise suppression and is that like really impacting my vocal quality? How intelligible is the audio as I'm speaking here, and how much of this background noise are you getting right now? It's a little bit of a lull in the traffic right here, but here comes some more cars to test out again. So I'll keep talking here for a brief bit, and now we are going to switch over to the Sony XM5s. And lastly, now we are listening to the Sony XM5s on the busy street, listening to how these microphones sound. How much noise suppression is there from the traffic behind me. Again, not on cars briefly, but here comes some more, so we'll hear that in a second. I'll keep talking for now. But how intelligible is this audio? The next test that we're going to go do is go back into the studio, into a more controlled environment, and listen to the microphones there. All right, so now we are inside again, and we are listening to the phone audio once again, but let's switch over now to the Bose QC Ultras. So now we are switched over to the Bose QC Ultras, and we're listening to the audio there in a controlled indoor environment here. So again, this is probably the best case scenario in terms of how these microphones are going to sound in a room like this with sound treatment, as opposed to the outdoor traffic, which is kind of the worst case scenario. So now let's switch over to the Sony XM5s. Okay, so last but not least, we've now switched over to the Sony XM5s in the indoor controlled studio environment to hear how these sound in the best case scenario. So how do these sound in comparison to the Bose QC Ultras? Let me know in the comments below right now. Listening back to both of these, I think the Sonys absolutely sound better. The QC Ultras were a little too aggressive in limiting the road noise outdoors, which ended up in a really hollow sound. It almost sounds like you're speaking from an echoey hallway, which is just a bizarre effect given the circumstances. Indoors, I think the Sony sounded much more natural and full as well. Both options were plenty intelligible, but when comparing head-to-head, the Sony XM5s win this round. Lastly, let's talk about sound quality. And spoiler alert, both of these earbuds sound great. But there are some key differences. Out of the gate, the Bose set is much more bass heavy, which I know some people really like. But I've definitely found the need to turn down the bass just a little bit to get a more neutral and more accurate sound in my normal test songs. The Sonys, on the other hand, come out of the box with a relatively neutral sound profile, but their real secret power lies in the software EQ controls, which really offer one of the best experiences of EQ control in an app that I've ever experienced with true wireless earbuds. And to take a second away from sound quality for just a second, this segues nicely in talking about the app. I'm using a Samsung S23 here with the latest software updates across the board, and I have to say that the Sony Headphones app is miles ahead of the Bose Music app. I found the Bose app to be very buggy. It often doesn't see that the headphones are connected, so I'll have to take them physically out of my ears, pop them back in the charging case, and then reconnect them before the app recognizes them and lets me change anything. Also, the settings that you are able to change are pretty limited, such as a simple 3-band EQ control and very limited customizability of the touch controls for the earbuds themselves. By contrast, I found the Sony headphones app really easy to navigate. The touch controls are super customizable, allowing up to triple taps on different ears for different functions. And the Sony app also has a Find Your EQ wizard that takes you through a process similar to an eye exam, where you just select your favorite setting between the different EQ settings as you're listening to your music, and it settles on which one should be your favorite. But also the manual EQ settings are much more customizable as well if you want to get into it, allowing you 5 bands of adjustments here, plus an additional 6th band of bass frequency. It also can store up to 3 custom EQ profiles here, and if you have a specific EQ that you like for different types of music, you can manually switch between them. On that note, check down in the description for my favorite EQ settings for both of these earbuds. But anyway, back to sound quality. I do think that these are 2 of the best sounding wireless earbuds I've ever tested. I think most people would be happy with either option, but even with less customizability from the app, I have to give the win here to the Bose QC Ultras. I found them to have a really clean and clear high end without getting harsh, and a much more powerful and authoritative low end without feeling overly bassy. They also offered a slightly wider soundstage, which made it easier to pick out subtle details in the stereo image in complicated pop mixes. Now, I've intentionally left out the more experimental sound modes for my test here, such as spatial audio, because I'm really not a fan of it in general. But both earbuds offer an option for it if you're into that kind of thing. Alright, let's wrap this up. So which is the better value and which are the best overall? From a value standpoint, I think you have to give it to the Sony XM5s. With the included wireless charging and a slimmer charging case, multi-point capability, and a very good app experience, these are the earbuds I would recommend for most people who are comparing these two. The major benefits of the Bose in comparison are the exceptional active noise cancellation, the overall comfort and fit, and the improved sound quality. Ultimately, it comes down to what features are most important to you, but I personally keep coming back to the Bose QC Ultras in my day-to-day use while I've owned both, because comfort and sound quality are what I value most. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please consider subscribing for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.